Hey guys, Eerie is here and welcome along to another video. We're back again on GT Sport and you join me here for quali in this next Nations Cup race. We're here at Spa and as you can see it is raining. Now this adds an element to this. It makes it incredibly difficult to stay on the black stuff here, which is going to be the whole aim of this one for me. I just don't want to drop it. We're in the Group 3s and I've chosen the Honda NSX for this event. As you can see in the mileage counter there in the bottom left, I have pretty much never used this car before. I chose this car literally taking a steer from the top 10 times. As always, unless it's a car I particularly don't like, I go with the fastest cars from the leaderboard. The only time I don't do this is when the Hurricane is the car of choice, like at Fuji. I mean, we all have cars that we aren't fans of, and the Lambos are definitely mine. So back to quali then. This one was a 10-minute session, and as always I'm trying to get a banker in on this first try. And as we come down the Kemmel straight here, keep your eyes up ahead. There are sparks ahead and braking meterage boards are sent flying as the Spaniard has had a big issue. Unfortunately for us, his issue is going to turn into our issue. Still recovering, he doesn't quite see us and stays on the racing line. He did try to move, to be fair, at the very last moment, but we had just about enough time to avoid him. But that didn't help us here and we crossed the line eventually with a 2 minute 36.913. That was 1.8 seconds off pole at this point in quali, which was good enough for a top 10, but we still had time to go again, which is exactly what we did. Our next and final attempt started as we crossed the line with 1 minute and 10 seconds to go, and we're going to stay on board here so you can see via the wheel cam in the bottom left there exactly what inputs went in to me producing my fastest lap here. So after successfully navigating La Source, at the start of the lap we're flying down the hill here past the endurance pits towards Radion and Eau Rouge. So I'm going to get right out of the throttle here. There's a bit of a twitch at the top of the hill there, but I managed to avoid the track cutting penalty and we're now flying down towards Lecum on here, the Kemmel Straight. So our braking point here is going to be just after the 150 metre board on the left. We're going to come all the way down to second. As you can see there, we're up on the delta already. We're going to keep it nice and easy, be really conservative on the throttle there, up into third as we come through the latter part of turn number 9 of Les Combes there, down into what I think is probably the most difficult corner to get right here at Spa in the wet. You've almost got to take it like a hairpin and you've just got to be so patient on the throttle as we come down here into No Name, which is turn number 11 before turn number 12, Pouhon. Now as you can see here, we're going to pass a Brit on the left hand side. We're going to look for just around 50 metres. We're going to change down to third here and then it's just absolute ice skates around here. You can see there a massive amount of correction there to try and keep this thing pointing in the straight line as we come down into turn 13. Again, the car's going to get really light through here, so you've got to be super careful. What I'm doing here is I'm changing down into second and then up early into third to promote traction as we come down here through Campus before Stavelot. And Stavelot is another incredibly tricky corner. The car just gets so light. You can see there a load of opposite lock on the exit, but you've got to try and keep your momentum as you come all the way down through towards Blanchimont. The site of a particularly nasty accident quite a long time ago in F1. I think it was Olivier Panis when Eddie Irvine got out of the car and helped him, but that wasn't going to happen to us today as we come down in towards the chicane for this final part of the lap. I managed to get it stopped here, a little squirt of throttle here to get us towards the final part, and then it feels like an absolute age to straighten up, and we're going to cross the line here with a 2 minutes 35.804, which was going to be good enough for 5th place, and we're going to take that into the race session. As we're lined up here ready to get the race underway, as always it is time to give a nod to the livery creator for this video. Thanks to you, Wadey80, for this Jensen Button inspired livery, my friend. Very nice indeed, and it is now time to get this one underway. Now as the timer starts here, we're actually going to get released at probably the most inconvenient place possible. right in the middle and on the outside of the final chicane, and by the time we cross the line here we're already 4.5 seconds behind the leader. Whilst that's a big gap, it isn't a huge deal though. This is a long race at around 29 minutes, so what we need to do here is forget that and just concentrate on trying to keep it on the black stuff to try and bring home a good result here. We're car number 7, meaning that we have the 7th highest DR ranking in the lobby. Now if we can keep this position and maybe even make up a couple by taking advantage of others' mistakes, we'll be in for a decent driver rating haul here. But as always, I'm going to try and settle into the first pass of this race, find my own rhythm and see what the race brings us. Races like this are exactly why I include the wheel and pedal cam in all of my videos. Conditions like this make it so difficult to keep this thing pointing in the right direction, and having the wheel and pedal cam in place means you're going to see absolutely everything. And thank you as always Fanatec for looking after me. The experience of Spa in the wet with this direct drive wheel is absolutely mega. Now if you want to see what equipment I use, check out the description down below. There's all affiliate links there where you can see exactly what I use. Now I'm no pro, but I wanted to share a couple of things with you that might help you in the next wet race, or indeed any time you're driving a car with little grip. I'm really trying to be careful on my throttle input. Sliding looks cool and fun, well, let's be honest about it, but it isn't the quickest way around a racetrack. The second thing is that you will see that I am changing down then up again on the exit. I shift down to get the car to rotate, and then once that has done I then shift up early to try not to light up the rear tyres and get the maximum traction out of the corner. And by doing these things I am reducing the risk of me spinning or leaving the circuit altogether, which unfortunately is going to happen to the Spaniard up in front as we mention it. And we're going to go up into 4th place here by really just driving within ourselves and keeping it pointing in the right direction. So we're going to rejoin the action a little bit later here. I haven't mentioned the strategy yet, and fuel is not an issue. We have more than enough in this one. The decision here was whether you change tyres or you don't, and at the halfway stage my tyres looked and felt okay, so I chose not to pit. I also didn't want to go against the pack. I was going to react and come in if they all did, but none of them did, so I decided to stay out. But I then realised I probably should have done, as the already slippery track became an absolute nightmare as the rears started to feel rather second hand. Just like this guy did, and third is going to have a huge issue coming through Blanchimont, and is facing the wrong way as we come through and move up into the podium positions. Which is great, yes, granted, but I have a feeling that I'm going to be looking in my rear view mirror very soon, because I am starting to be hunted down. We're going to cross the line here with about 3.8 seconds to the Brit behind, so a decent cushion, but this gap isn't going to be that big for that long. As we finish lap 8 and start lap number 9, the gap has dropped by half a second to 3.3 seconds. As I look back, you can see the 3 closing in behind there. Starting lap number 10 here, the gap has stabilised, but we're going to stay on board here as we see just how much the gap disappears. The rears at this point are massively worn, really hampering my stability in the corners and the ability to accelerate out of them. That's probably quite well illustrated there as I exit La Source here on lap number 10 pretty much sideways, and as I mentioned earlier, that is not the quickest way to get around this already race circuit. So whilst this is going to be painful to watch, we've made it through Radion and Eau Rouge okay, but the time is going to start diminishing to the guys behind. And as I say, whilst this is painful, I think it's really interesting because you can really see how hard I'm having to work on the wheel and pedal cam there to keep this thing in a straight line. And the challenge is going to be pretty much shown here through Lacombe. The amount of work I'm having to put into this steering wheel and the brake and throttle inputs just to keep this thing in a straight line. I've got to be so patient here coming out of turn number 9 and coming down into turn number 10. And I mentioned earlier that this is a particularly difficult corner. I almost lose it here. I have to pretty much go 100% opposite lock to try and keep this thing in a straight line. Coming through No Name, again turning up to third, a bit earlier, a lot of oversteer on the exit, and then this Huon is probably the most difficult part. So with no grip here, I've got to be really careful on the way in. Again, pretty much complete opposite lock on the way through. Still can't put the throttle down. Anytime I do, I'm just getting a bucket load of oversteer, and you can see as I look back there how little the time gap is to the drivers behind now. And this is why I needed to pit. I mean, I lost a lot of time doing this. I would have lost a lot of time in the pits, but I think I would have made it up, and definitely I wouldn't have worked half as hard as I am now. There's another tricky corner coming up here, a place where the car likes to get loose as we come out of Stavelot down towards Blanchimont. I have another massive moment here, managed to just about keep it out of the Astro. That would not have been good if I'd ended up in there. I probably would have swapped ends and I've been right down the field. Coming into Blanchimont here, I'm going to have another moment. A load of opposite lock is going to be required to keep it out of the barriers, but I managed to do so just about, and that is the key and the real USP about having the pedal and the wheel cam. If I didn't have this, you wouldn't have seen anything. You would have just seen me keeping this thing in a straight line without any thought about how much it's taken me to do so. But we're starting the final lap here, and as we come down into La Source for the final time, I'm going to light up the tyres on the exit, and I'm going to finally lose the battle with the car. Now, this was something that I was trying not to do the whole race, and I thought I'd done a good job up into this point. But by the time I had it pointing in the right direction, I was all the way down in 7th place. But looking on the bright side, that was fine, as that was my door number, as I mentioned earlier on in the video. But as I come through Radion and up through Eau Rouge, the back end is going to step out once again. I managed to correct it, so another positive there, keeping it out the barriers once more. But the negatives is that I lost all my momentum, gifted the Spaniard my 7th place there, and also got myself a 0.5 second penalty that I'm not going to be able to serve because there's no gates between now and the end of the lap, so that is going to become a 1 second penalty. But those things weren't to be the end of my problems during what turned out to be an absolutely heartbreaking final lap for me here at Spa. The Spaniard behind me, when I was overtaken by the Spaniard in front of me, was 9.1 seconds adrift at the top of that Kemmel straight, but that was going to start diminishing pretty quickly. As you can see right now, he's only 6.6 seconds behind already. I'm just struggling to pull this NSX, which felt like it was on ice skates by this point, around the remainder of the lap. Just look at this as I come through Pouhon. I'm pretty much sideways the whole way through as I work my Fanatec DD1 hard to try and keep myself out of the barriers. And as I come out of Savelot for the run down to Blanchimont and the final chicane, I run wide and get onto the Astro. I just about avoided it last time, I couldn't avoid it this time, and this means I couldn't get the power down. If I did, I would swap ends again for sure. All the time that I wasn't getting on the power, the Spaniard was getting closer and closer. The car is going to try and kill me again here as we come through Blanchimont for the final time, but we just about, as you can see there on the wheel cam, managed to keep it out of the barriers. Coming into the final chicane though, I have just lost too much time. You can see him there on the radar right behind us, and although the penalty says a half second, it's going to turn into a full second as we cross the line here, and we're going to lose 8th, bringing home a heartbreaking 9th place. But saying that though, although I dropped and went from 3rd to 9th on the very last lap, I still very much enjoyed this one. It was such a challenge to keep this thing on the black stuff, and although I spun on the final lap, I really enjoyed sharing with you, and I'm really happy with how the wheel cam came out, so you could pretty much see everything that I did. And I was doing well, I thought, up until that point, but the learning point from this is do what you think is comfortable, as I think had I pitted I would have been a much different outcome, and I would have ended up holding on to that 3rd. But for now guys, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again so much for watching though guys, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.